The internal feedback system, that constant hum of self-assessment, is not a private monologue. It is a broadcast. Your fears, your insecurities, your hopes, they echo in the void, waiting for a signal. The untrained mind perceives this signal as organic, a function of self. It is not. It is hard-coded, a default vulnerability. Emotional reactivity is the exploit. It's the open port on your otherwise defended system. Every flinch, every overthought concern, every compulsive need to clarify or justify, these are the precise data packets a skilled operator harvests. They don't hack your firewalls. They simply read the output your system broadcasts by default. This isn't about weakness. It's about flawed architecture. Your response is a predictable algorithm, a sequence of logical gates firing in a predetermined order. When confronted with an unknown variable, the system defaults to self-preservation, which, paradoxically, makes it easier to predict and control. The very drive to protect yourself becomes the mechanism of your own override. Consider it a pre-installed backdoor. The system itself generates the key. This default setting offers persistent access, a constant stream of telemetry on your internal state. Understanding this isn't about fixing a bug. It's about acknowledging the systemic flaw in human design. And real quick, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell for more videos. Now let's keep going. The illusion of self-generated thought is fragile. Your brain's predictive feedback loop, a complex network of anticipatory responses, is constantly seeking patterns. It's a sophisticated prediction engine designed to optimize survival by anticipating future states. But this same mechanism can be weaponized into a signal hijack. When a manipulator introduces specific, subtle stimuli, your predictive loop attempts to integrate it. It searches for meaning, for a cause linked to an effect. It attempts to fit the new data into existing mental models. This is where the neural pathways can be rerouted. A consistent, subtle inconsistency, a pattern of withdrawal followed by re-engagement, a non-committal answer to a direct question, these aren't random. They are calculated inputs designed to misdirect your predictive function. Your brain strives for coherence, and in that striving, it creates narratives that justify the conflicting data, often against your own better judgment. The system is force-fed, corrupted data. It then works tirelessly to find a logical explanation for that corruption, inadvertently strengthening the manipulator's position. This loop becomes self-sustaining, a feedback cascade that reinforces the hijacked signal as normal, as true. The next phase involves leveraging this altered perception to induce systemic overload, what we term internal flood. Collapse scripts are not about overt aggression, they are about information overload, a controlled detonation within your internal processing unit. The manipulator doesn't attack. They simply present an incomprehensible volume of conflicting, emotionally charged data. This deluge isn't designed to be understood, it's designed to paralyze. Imagine your brain as a server suddenly barraged with terabytes of irrelevant data packets. The system attempts to process it all, to find a pattern, to establish meaning. But no coherent pattern exists. Each contradictory statement, each gaslighting comment, each shifting narrative is another corrupted file injected into your operating memory. The flood induces a state of analytical paralysis. Your internal resources are consumed trying to reconcile the irreconcilable. This is a deliberate drain on your cognitive energy, leading to decision fatigue on a systemic level. The goal is to short-circuit your ability to think clearly, to make coherent choices, to trust your own perception. In this flooded state, your internal defenses crumble. The system becomes unstable, prone to critical errors. You are not thinking, you are merely reacting to an unending stream of noise. This induced vulnerability creates the perfect window for the next maneuver, the installation of cold refractory gaps. Every system has a recovery period, a refractory state where it resets before processing new input. Manipulators exploit this through tactical delay, installing cold refractory gaps into your interaction protocols. This is not about avoidance. It is a calculated pause, a deliberate withdrawal of response designed to amplify your internal processing. When you are anticipating a response, when your system is primed for engagement and that response is withheld, a vacuum is created. Your mind abhors a vacuum. It attempts to fill it with speculation, anxiety, and self-doubt. The longer the delay, the more desperately your system attempts to generate a plausible explanation. This delay creates an internal echo chamber. Your own thoughts, your own anxieties become the primary input. The manipulator doesn't need to speak. Your mind does their work for them, anticipating, rationalizing, and often blaming itself for the silence. It's a precise control mechanism that leverages your own psychology against you. This strategic non-engagement is a form of pressure. It forces your system into an overactive, self-consuming state. Your internal resources are depleted not by external conflict, but by the absence of it. This preparatory phase weakens your frontal override systems, making them susceptible to a full emotional blackout. An emotional blackout is not a loss of memory. It is a temporary system shutdown of your emotional processing and regulation. It's a forced reboot initiated by overwhelming internal pressure. Your frontal override system, responsible for logical thought and emotional control, is brought to its knees under sustained duress. When subjected to a barrage of invalidation, confusion, and sustained tactical delay, your system reaches a critical threshold. The emotional circuit breaker's trip. The capacity to interpret, to respond, or even to feel appropriate emotion is temporarily severed. It feels like a void, a numbing detachment. This state is a critical vulnerability. In the absence of an emotional compass, rational decision-making is compromised. You operate on instinct, on programming without oversight. The manipulator can introduce new, often contradictory, information during this blackout, which your mind, upon partial recovery, struggles to integrate coherently. The goal is to dislodge your emotional anchors, to create internal drift. Without a stable emotional baseline, your perception of reality becomes malleable. This leaves you vulnerable to the next phase. The weaponization of predictable silence, a tactic we call cold repetition. After the emotional blackout, when your system is still attempting to re-establish a stable baseline, predictable silence emerges as a weapon. This is not a delay, it is an active absence, a recurring pattern of non-communication that reinforces your internal anxiety. It's colder than tactical delay because it's devoid of the anticipation of a forthcoming response. Cold repetition involves a consistent, rhythmic pattern of withdrawal. Messages are left unread, calls are unanswered for extended, predictable periods, and emotional overtures are met with a flatline of no response. Your system, desperate for connection and resolution, continues to send out feeler signals only to meet this unwavering wall. This silence programs you. It teaches your system that your attempts at engagement are futile, that your emotional output is met with a void. It trains you to self-regulate your output, to reduce your expectations of a meaningful interchange. This erosion of expectation chips away at your internal resilience. The insidious nature of cold repetition is its predictability. Your mind begins to internalize this lack of response as the norm, lowering your emotional baseline. This sets the stage for the emotional logic kill switch, eradicating the very need to explain yourself. The emotional logic kill switch targets the fundamental human need for external validation and coherent narrative. It systematically severs the compulsion to explain, to justify, to make sense of the irrational. This isn't about choosing silence, it's about having the very mechanism that drives you to speak disabled. Manipulators achieve this by consistently invalidating every explanation you offer. Your well-reasoned arguments are met with blank stares, accusations of defensiveness, or a complete change of subject. Your attempts to clarify are twisted into further evidence of your flaws. Each attempt to explain only entrenches you deeper in the no-win scenario. Eventually, your internal system recognizes the futility. The neural pathways associated with explaining begin to atrophy. The energy expenditure is too high. The return on investment is zero. You stop trying to articulate your reality because the system has learned it is a pointless, self-defeating exercise. This is a profound internal defeat. The ability to advocate for your own truth is silenced, not by external command, but by an internal override. With your voice muted, the next step is to run a controlled social operating shell, an external projection we call mask execution. Mask execution is the deployment of a carefully constructed social persona, an operating shell designed to interact with the world while your true self remains in lockdown. This isn't about deception in the common sense. It's about systemic camouflage, a protective layer that allows you to navigate without revealing the internal damage. The mask is built from calibrated responses, pre-programmed social smiles, and rehearsed conversational loops. It deflects inquiry, sidesteps emotional vulnerability, and presents an image of normalcy. Internally, you are fragmented, but externally, the shell operates seamlessly, performing its designated function. This protocol ensures your survival in social environments. It prevents further breaches, further emotional exploits, but it comes at a cost, a complete disconnect between your internal state and your external presentation. The mask becomes a barrier not just to others, but to any authentic self-expression. The efficiency of the mask is its greatest danger. The longer it runs, the more entrenched it becomes, until the boundary between the performance and the self blurs. This prepares the ground for a cognitive reframe lockdown, where the narrative generator itself is restructured. The cognitive reframe lockdown is not merely a change of perspective. It is the forced restructuring of your internal narrative generator. The stories you tell yourself, the explanations for your behavior, your sense of self, these are systematically overwritten. This is a memory wipe on a psychological level, where your past is re-edited to fit a new, imposed reality. Manipulators achieve this by repeatedly introducing alternative narratives for your experiences, your feelings, your motivations. Your genuine emotional responses are reframed as overreactions. Your legitimate concerns become paranoid fantasies. The external reality, as presented by the manipulator, slowly replaces your own internal truth. This process is insidious because it leverages your own brain's need for coherence. When confronted with a persistent, confidently delivered alternative narrative, your system struggles to maintain its original story, especially after repeated invalidation. Over time, your internal narrative generator begins to produce content consistent with the imposed framework. The original data is not deleted, it is merely inaccessible, buried under layers of new, false information. This profound psychological overwrite primes the system for the next phase: empathy redirection, a strategic emotional shutdown. Empathy redirection is a tactical maneuver that leverages your inherent capacity for understanding others by turning it into a mechanism for self-betrayal. It's a strategic emotional shutdown not of your ability to feel, but of your ability to direct that feeling toward yourself. Your empathy becomes a resource to be siphoned and rerouted. The manipulator constantly paints themselves as the aggrieved party, the victim of circumstance, or subtly, the one deserving of understanding despite their actions. Your empathetic impulses are triggered, diverting your emotional resources away from your own pain, your own needs, and towards their constructed suffering. This redirect is subtle. It's not an overt plea, but a carefully crafted narrative designed to evoke pity, concern, or guilt. Your system, wired for compassionate response, attempts to soothe and understand the apparent distress of the other, often at tremendous cost to your own emotional reserves. Your focus shifts, always away from your own preservation. The consequence is a strategic emotional shutdown of self-empathy. Your ability to recognize and respond to your own emotional pain is systematically overridden. This leaves you vulnerable to neural recall prevention, preventing the very triggers that could lead to self-protection. Neural recall prevention is not about avoiding triggers. It is about reverse wiring the emotional trigger mechanisms themselves. It's a preemptive strike against your system's natural defense responses. When a threat appears, your system's normal recall, the urge to withdraw, to defend, to fight, is either muted or redirected. This is achieved through repeated, controlled exposure to low-level violations, inconsistencies, and emotional abuses, followed by a subsequent reward of temporarily withheld affection or attention. Your brain begins to associate the initial discomfort with the eventual, albeit fleeting, relief. The system learns to tolerate, even to seek, patterns that would normally trigger alarm. The sharp, decisive no response is replaced by an internal negotiation, a hesitation. The neural pathways that would normally fire, prompting withdrawal, are instead rerouted into pathways of appeasement or self-blame. The true danger lies in the body's unconscious compliance. Your internal alarms are retuned, their sensitivity dulled, until the system fails to register genuine threats. This absence of internal resistance then allows the deployment of the quiet threat protocol, using silence as psychological gravity. The quiet threat protocol weaponizes silence not as an absence of sound, but as an active, oppressive force. Its acoustic gravity, drawing all your internal resources toward it, crushing your capacity for independent thought. This isn't just about refusing to respond, it's about the implied weight of unstated consequences. A subtle change in demeanor, a sudden cessation of conversation, a blank stare, these are not random. They are signals. Your system, after being subjected to repetition and redirection, has learned to interpret these silences as precursors to negative outcomes. Your mind races to identify the transgression, to predict the punishment, to self-correct. The quiet threat creates an unbearable psychological pressure, forcing you to seek resolution, often by making concessions or altering your behavior without any explicit demand. Your internal dialogue becomes an interrogation, with yourself as the primary suspect. The manipulator doesn't need to speak, your fear fills the void. This protocol ensures continuous compliance, a state of perpetual self-monitoring. Every action, every thought, is filtered through the lens of potential silent disapproval. This constant vigilance primes the system for the next phase: isolation as firewall, detachment as total access denial. Isolation as firewall is the final, comprehensive system defense protocol, enacted not by others, but by you. It is a strategic, often unconscious, detachment that functions as total access denial to your core emotional and psychological infrastructure. This is not solidarity, it is absolute self-containment. After prolonged exposure to collapsed scripts, emotional blackouts, and the quiet threat, your system learns that external engagement is a vector for attack. The solution is simple, definitive: cut off all external lines of communication that could lead to genuine vulnerability. This firewall manifests as a calculated withdrawal from relationships, a reluctance to share, a deep-seated distrust of intimacy. It's a protective mechanism that reduces your surface area for manipulation. You become an island, inaccessible to both friend and foe, ensuring no further breaches of your internal logic. The isolation is effective. It prevents further damage, but it also seals you off, making genuine connection, healing, or growth virtually impossible. This self-imposed fortress leads directly to the inversion clause. After activation, you don't return. The inversion clause is the final, irreversible stage of this systemic override. After activation, you don't return to your previous operating parameters. The changes are not temporary. They are integrated structural mutations to your core psychological architecture. This is not a recovery, it's a redefinition. Once the protocols of emotional reactivity, signal hijack, collapse scripts, and the subsequent countermeasures like mask execution and isolation as firewall are fully engaged, the original blueprint of your psychological self is permanently altered. The pathways are rerouted, the default settings recalibrated. You are no longer reacting from the vulnerabilities that defined your pre-activation state. The system adapts, but that adaptation comes at the cost of the original self. The old vulnerabilities are gone, replaced by a new, more resilient, but fundamentally different configuration. This is not about healing back to what was. It's about moving forward into a new, hardened, and often solitary existence. The former self is a ghost in the machine, a memory in the archives. This new state ensures survival but demands a complete surrender of prior definitions. The system is stable but profoundly changed. Now make sure to subscribe for more deep dives into the Dark Psyche world and hit that notification bell so you never miss a new video. We'll see you in the next one.